value is the key. So if you can frame up anything that you're working on, anything that you're learning, any content that you're writing, anything that whenever you're interacting with people, you should always be freely giving out as much value as you can.
Hello everyone, Ken here, back with another video for you. I'm happy to welcome Danny Ma as our special guest interview this week. Danny would consider himself a recovering data scientist. He's actually moved over to more ML engineering work, so I think that this will give us a little bit more of a perspective of what that transition is like. His work has consisted of deploying machine learning models and designing customer experiences in the retail and banking sectors. Danny's passion is to guide businesses and individuals in their machine learning/AI journey. He believes that a clear understanding of data strategy and applied machine learning will be a huge differentiator in this brave new world. Danny has a YouTube channel, which I'll link above and below, where he provides personalized mentorship. I highly recommend reaching out and connecting with him on LinkedIn. He's one of the thought leaders in the data science meme community, and he really posts some fun and informative stuff on the platform there. Without further ado, let's jump into the interview here.
Cool.
Danny, thank you so much for coming on. You know, you bring such a cool accent, but also such cool data science experience. You know, most of my audience is not from Australia, so it's a little bit novel, and I absolutely love that. I love the diversity that we're bringing on to this channel and to the show. So first, why don't you just give a little bit of background about your experience with data science, how you went about learning it, and a little bit of your kind of work experience and your presence here.
Okay, so for my background, I essentially studied a bachelor's of actuarial studies. I only have an undergrad, and during that time of my life, I was working on some internships as well. So doing some internships in insurance companies where I was first exposed to some data. I was using a little bit of Excel. Some of the guys told me to use some SAS, some older software. And they also told me to learn a little bit of SQL, but I really had no idea what was going on at the time. They just said, oh, read this and try and learn it. So I just nodded and agreed. So yeah, from there, I kind of went on to join a data analytics consulting firm in Australia called, maybe I shouldn't name them here, but I joined them, and it was really a great experience. I joined as a graduate, directly working with big data sets from some of the largest retailers in Australia. And we were asked to solve problems like they're all about the sales metrics and different things in terms of products that customers were purchasing. So it was very relatable. It made a lot of sense when you started looking at the data.
And to be clear, your first role was an analyst, correct?
Correct. So I would even say my first ever role was kind of like a data entry person. So I was just smashing away keys, trying to get data from all these different websites into an Excel spreadsheet. So I've done a lot in my lifetime.
Very cool.
Yeah, from there, I kind of went from analyst working on those retail supermarkets style data to then focusing on, okay, can we use this data to try and target some customers and build out some segments for digital marketing? So this was in the form of emails, SMS, and some Facebook impressions, which at the time was really new. It was a new thing to kind of do customer level targeting directly on Facebook. So that was pretty interesting. And yeah, after I think 2 years in that role, I started stagnating, and I wanted to learn something new, challenge myself. And I asked a few of the people around the company. Luckily, there were some data science practitioners and some machine learning people there also. And I asked them, okay, where do I go next? And they told me to learn Python, learn R, do some statistical modeling, do some predictive modeling. So I jump on Google and try and figure out what to do. I think a lot of people have the same sort of journey, but even back then there was a lot of material, and there was no path for people to actually follow to actually get to becoming a data scientist or working in data analytics in general. So I found it quite intimidating at the beginning. I don't have a software engineering background at all. So one of the first things that I learned, or that the interwebs told me to learn, was to learn the CLI, the command line tool. So I had a Mac at the time, so I was just kind of fire up the thing, try not to delete my whole computer. And that's where I started essentially doing the programming. And then after I did a little bit of that, I learned some Python. I did all these free courses. Probably Code Academy was the main one. I'd wake up at like 5 a.m. just trying to finish off something, rock up late to work, unfortunately. Sorry, old boss. And I kind of did that for a few months before I moved into a position where I wanted to apply for data science roles. And I had really great recruiters reach out to me. And one of the guys who I'm still in touch with now, he put me forward for a role within a bank for a digital analytics role. So it was a little bit further away from the data science than I had hoped for, because I wanted to go directly into a data science role. But in hindsight, it was a real blessing. So my GM who interviewed me, the final boss for the interview, he essentially straight up told me, look, this role is not a data science role. Are you okay with that? And I said, yes, I'm okay with this, but I would really like to progress my career to eventually work in data science. And he really appreciated the honesty. And I think from there, he just gave me all this different opportunities to grow. And my direct managers also gave me opportunities to work with the data science team within the bank. And eventually we started working on a project together. And that's where I started doing more of the data science that we see these days, where you're trying to predict customer behavior. You build the model, then you deploy the model, and you run experiments. All of that stuff, it was all from that first role when I was working in the bank. And that was not in a data science capacity, but I magically moved my way through to that area. And then, after a few years, we arrive. We are where we are. So that's a little bit of the background of my journey into data science. I wouldn't say that it was easy by any means, but one of the things that really stuck with me was I just really believed that I could do it. And I just kept working, doing the time, and kind of just believing in myself and getting great encouragement from some of the peers around me as well. So I found that really important. But it's pretty much how I got here.
Well, one thing I love about your story is that all of the growth is incremental, right? You start as a data analyst, you slowly pick up more and more data science knowledge as you go, and then you eventually transition into a data science role. That's something that I really stress on my channel a lot, is that you never really jump into a data science role, or most people don't, unless you're coming from like a PhD background. You really just transition. You start picking up more and more of the skills. And that looks a lot more like, hey, I started as a data analyst and I picked up more and more of the software engineering skills, or I started as a software engineer and I picked up more and more of the math and the logic and the storytelling skills and the intuition. And I think that your story, your path is like a case study of what people really should be doing approaching this field, is not getting discouraged because they didn't land the specific data science role that they wanted, because that's very unlikely. But you landed a role that would eventually get you into the position you wanted to be in. And I think that transparency with your boss is also really important. If you go in and let your boss know that you want to be working in this type of position in data science going forward, it's in their best interest to help you out, as long as it's not hurting their team. Happy employees are good for them. Employees that are upskilled, that are doing better work, it's really good for them as well. Why wouldn't they help you along that path? So I think that's generally a misconception a lot of people have. One thing that you mentioned to me in a previous conversation is that you really learned a lot of your data science through a mentor. That's something that I personally didn't have the experience to do. That's something that I think is really great, but not always necessary. What was your experience like with that? And for anyone who's watching, is that something you recommend? Is there something that you could do to supplement for finding one individual person? What are your thoughts kind of on that general issue of mentorship?
So my story with obtaining my first data science mentor, it kind of just happened at work. So we were working on a project where we wanted to predict which customers are likely to take up a certain banking product and try to improve the sales within a digital channel. And from there, we suggested that we work with some of the data science team to try and find some ideas and some different things that we could work on and experiment with. And pretty much because I had a great relationship with my boss and my management team, they suggested that I take the lead in working closely with the data scientists to make this happen. So yeah, for me, it was almost by luck. I'm really grateful that I can still reach out to these mentors, and I call them like great friends to this day, and they're really lovely people. The way that I learned from them was very much, so imagine like carpentry or any of those trades where you learn on the job, you learn via an apprenticeship. And there's a lot of learning that you get directly from a master. So kind of like in the same sense, before I started doing a lot of my own mentorship things for other people, I was very deep into reading Mastery by Robert Greene and all these other things. Yeah, where you essentially, if you can find a mentor who is a master in their field, it saves you a lot of time fumbling around and trying to find out what you should focus on, because you have someone who you can access, who have those experiences, and you can kind of learn directly from them. And I found that I might have been really lucky in that my mentors they're pretty much like, I consider all of them as some of the best data scientists in Australia, with no challenger. They're just that, they're really amazing. But I found that their way of introducing me to some of the topics and some of the other techniques that they were using at the time for the machine learning, was the way that they taught me was very methodical, very logical. There was never any sort of, you need to know all this crazy maths to actually get this done. They were true experts in the sense that they could really distill down relatively complex concepts into something very simple and explainable to a new data science person that I was at the time. And I found that had a really large impact on how I would approach problems in the future, how I would try and always really distill anything which is really technical into very simple terms. And that helped with the communication piece as well, because communication is really important when we're working in data science. It's not always about tuning your algorithms and getting the best result. More often than not, it's about how well can you communicate those results and the effort that you put in to make it really great. So yeah, I found, a mentor was critical for my learning. But I've had discussions with other people where you kind of, when you're starting off, you don't really have enough experience to pick a great mentor, and it's almost down to luck. If you're working with someone who is really, really great, you're very lucky. But maybe you work with someone who is not quite an expert in their field, and they have specific techniques and ways of doing things that work for them, but it might not work for you also. So that one, I'm still trying to figure out what's the best way to tackle that sort of issue, because I know when I was starting off, like any sort of mentorship from anyone who had more experience than me was worthwhile at the time, purely because these people have had the experience, and definitely there's things that you can learn from them. The only thing that I'd caution people with is just always be very mindful that they have their own experience, and all of their experience comes from their context. And just to always, it sounds kind of bad, but you don't want to blindly believe in your mentor. Like, I know I did. I truly blindly believed them with 100% of my faith, which turned out okay for me. But just have that in mind. Like, don't be too skeptical. Always be open to new learning and having an open mind for anything that they want to teach you. But try to improve your own awareness of your skills, the way you like to work, your preferences for different tooling, or maybe not tooling and languages, but more just the way that you learn. I think that's really important. So having a mentor is super valuable. Having a great mentor is even better, but being able to differentiate between various potential mentors, I think you only get that after having gone through a few different mentors as well. So I think it's very much a personal development sort of thing, where the more you can learn from others and have a very open mind and absorb like a sponge from different sources, the more experiences you will gain, and that's how you can kind of move forward in your own personal development and career as well.
Awesome. And there are two things that I wanted to kind of point out in your statement about mentorship. And one of them is that you look at these mentors as your friends now. You said they're some of your best relationships. And I think that all mentorship should be viewed in that way. A mentorship is not a one-way street. You're not going and getting all of this help learning without having some way to reciprocate. In the sense of your work, you were able to do better work and work towards a unifying goal because you had that mentorship. When you talk about the apprenticeship aspect, if you think about how apprenticeship works, like a blacksmith, or you look at like Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid. Mr. Miyagi had Daniel-san running around doing all the chores, but he was still learning at the same time. So they're both getting value, and they're both either getting output or learning or skills. It's again not just this one-way street where only one person is learning a lot and the other person is just investing their time. So I think that whenever someone is going to try and create a mentorship relationship, it's really important to be careful and mindful of the mentor's time, because if they are a really qualified mentor, they probably have a lot of other people asking them for mentorship. They probably have a lot of other things competing for their time because they have a high value skill set. So I think that it is okay, like you were saying, maybe not to shoot for the stars. Like I'm not going to go, I forget the guy's name, Jeremy Howard, I think, who did all the Fast AI course. I'm not going to go reach out to him and see if he'll mentor me. The probability of that is really low. But if I find someone who's maybe a step ahead of me and has seen a lot of the things that I'm struggling with right now fairly recently, I can still learn something very cool from that person, even though they're not a groundbreaking data scientist. They've just experienced what I'm experiencing now, which I think is really cool. One thing you also do really well, and everyone here, you should definitely follow Danny on LinkedIn. He's got an awesome presence there. He has some of the best data science memes out there as well. I quite enjoy those. You've grown an awesome social presence, and the social presence I stress on the channel as well. It's a great way to potentially open yourself up to new clients, job opportunities, just meet really awesome people, meet mentors, whatever that might be. Can you talk a little bit about how you've grown that in such a short period of time, and why there's so much value in creating a network like that?
So I'll give a little bit of a backstory. So back when I was still working within the bank, this must have been 2-3 years ago, I started posting on LinkedIn to try and share some of the skills that I had. So I would try and say like, oh, here are some of the skills you need to learn as a aspiring data scientist, and kind of like those listicle form of things. But in hindsight, when I think back to when I was posting then, it was very, for me, when I look back now, it was very self-serving. So it was more like, oh, look at me, I've done all this and blah, blah, blah. Look how cool I am. When I was posting like that, it didn't last for very long. I got tired of just trying to write like that. And I didn't know it at the time, but my interest sort of just dropped down after 2-3 months of posting various different things, not very frequently. Some things would get great like great amount of likes. Some other things didn't really get any traction at all. So it was very up and down. But I think now, probably after 2-3 years, I came back and I started being more active on LinkedIn, probably around like end of May, beginning of June. So it's literally just been a few months. So I can talk about the mindset of what I did when I started posting again. So I started posting again recently, and I really thought of how I can be of service to other people. So I really flipped the concept of, oh, look at me, look how cool I am, here are all my skills, here's why I'm awesome, to more of like, okay, this concept was the most important thing for me, where it was every person is the hero in their own journey. You don't have to be the hero in their journey. Like this doesn't make any sense. So I took that piece of advice from a book that I read, and that really hit home.
Do you have the book off the top of your head? I can link it.
I think it was called something about a story brand.
Okay.
But
I'll see if I can
in a
find
nutshell,
it.
it's like, instead of trying to be like Luke Skywalker or whatever, you want to be Yoda. You want to be the person who's helping the hero. And everyone is the hero in their journey. So you have a much larger audience to actually help as well.
I like that.
So yeah, with all of my posts, I always think, who am I helping with this? Is someone going to get value from it? What do I want them to think? Oh, so I always think about like think, feel, do. There's like a corporate sort of thing where people used to tell me, oh, before you go into any meeting or before you have any communication with people, you should think about how the audience will think about your message, how they'll feel after they read it or take in what you're trying to tell them, and what action you want them to take as well. So I try and put that lens onto anything that I put out there on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or anything like that. But I think another really important thing is just being, this one is hard, but to try and be authentically yourself. I know it gets thrown around a lot, like, oh, be authentic, be genuine, all this sort of stuff. And probably what I'm saying is not going to help. But I really found when I focused on just wanting to help others in various different ways, I found when I focused on other people more and the audience that I want to serve and what value they're going to get from my content or anything that I'm doing, it really helped me deliver that through any medium, through language, through videos, through what my personal, my facial expressions when I'm doing videos. All of those things count. And I think when people talk about authenticity, that's part of it. So you want to be you, essentially. You don't need to be fake. You don't need to try to be someone else. Everyone is unique in that sense. So any experience that you have, definitely, if you share it with others, I'm sure at least one other person will find it useful. And that's sort of where I started with some of my posts. It was just, who am I helping? Can I help at least some people with my experience? Binary yes or no. If yes, then I'll do it. And another thing that really helped with my LinkedIn style as well, I've been joking with my friends where I had the switch where I kind of just stopped caring so much. This one is also a really hard piece of advice as well, but I found, I was telling my friends, oh, I have so much fun on LinkedIn. I'm using it like I used to use Facebook 10 years ago, where you just kind of, you see someone post something which is interesting, you share your thoughts in a nice and positive manner. Don't hate on anything, just try and stay positive at all times. And you just kind of, it's very addictive, like all social media platforms, where you can just spend lots and lots of time interacting with different people. And over time, people notice that. So if you're the guy on LinkedIn who's always writing some fun comments on some very popular influencers' posts, for example, then if you do it consistently enough, people will notice. And that personally, that has helped me a little bit. You can take that tactic from me. But I honestly, I did it not out of wanting to grow my audience, but I did it purely because I wanted to interact and just have fun. So that's, again, part of the authenticity and being genuine with what you're trying to do.
Well, if someone is, let's say, an employer or someone in a network you'd like to be a part of, has seen you engage on LinkedIn, seen you talking in the same communities that they're talking in, if you were to reach out to that person, you're not a complete stranger anymore, right? You're someone that is at least related to their network. And that, a lot of people call it like a cold connection or like a slightly warm connection. That slightly warm connection makes an incredibly large difference, right? If I've seen your posts, I'm like, oh, I know who Danny is. He says really funny stuff. He has some really good takes and good insights on data science. I'm going to listen to what he has to say more. I'm going to be more open to connecting with him than someone else. Another really important thing that I want to highlight that you said about value, and as you're thinking about the value you're creating for other people, that's what you look for in a data scientist. All of their work is supposed to be driving value for a business, it's supposed to be driving value for someone else. I mean, in some cases, it can drive value for yourself. If I made like a stock trading model or like a sports betting model, great. But you should be sharing projects that get recognition. The projects that have a positive impact on other people that you do are the ones that get a tremendous amount of likes or recognition or whatever that might be. So if you're framing all of your work, all of your projects, all of your extracurriculars around those things, there's almost no way that you couldn't benefit from it socially, because that's what is designed to be viral or designed to blow up. So I love that aspect. I think it ties in so well with the actual career. So the last thing I'd like to focus on is your experience, starting a company related to data science, but also consulting as a data scientist. What are some of the things that you've learned, some of the things that you think could help other people, but also some of the things that maybe you would change about your approach?
So from a data science consulting perspective, I don't have experience in terms of being able to consult on larger projects with a team of people, but I can definitely talk about how to engage with businesses as a contractor, as an individual contributor, and how that sort of looks like, at least in the Australian market. I think it'll be quite common in other environments also. So in a nutshell, when you go out for a consulting or a contracting sort of role, the aim is you need to be known as an expert in that field. When you think of the most likely, if you're going to be a contractor, the rate is a little bit higher than a full-time employee. You have a bit more freedom in terms of some of the approaches that you'd like to take as well. But in terms of engagement, you really need to demonstrate what value you could bring to any client very upfrontly, very almost straight away. You need to come in with, my name is Danny, here's some of the experience that I have with your business. Here are some of the problems that I can help out with. Here's estimated you could make this much money or whatever. All those values may or may not be true in terms of whatever numbers you give them. But having that sort of approach in terms of how you're trying to help the client or the people that you're working with your unique skill set, that will really reap benefits if you can demonstrate and communicate that early. If you start talking about all your experience, and in the same way as on LinkedIn, where you go, oh, look at me, look how cool I am, here's what I've done before, but you don't link it to how much value you could provide, then it still doesn't work. So in the end, it's all about value, and value to a client could mean, say the client is a corporate and they're managing their own profit and loss within a certain division. How can you help the big boss drive more value from his team with some of your skills? So if you're really great with infrastructure or different things and process mapping within the data science, maybe that's what you can come in with and say, oh, here's what I've done in the past. it led to this much efficiency increase, which led to $5 million or something. I can do the same for your company if you give me an opportunity to take a look, and I'm sure I can apply some of my skills. So it's almost like a pure marketing approach in that sense, where you really need to, I think this is why being proficient enough in the marketing as a data professional is really important, because it's not just about selling your services to a new client or trying to hit them hard with a great pitch, but you kind of do that day to day as you're trying to sell any solution that you're delivering. So you might have built this awesome kick-ass model, but if you can't sell it in the right way, how do you know that the business will just innately understand what you're trying to tell them? So in the end, when we think of any consulting or contracting or anything we're engaging with clients in that sense, communication will always be key. Your skills will take you quite a long distance if you've got great expertise, but if you can't communicate that well and in a great value proposition method for your client, then it's still not going to work as well as possible.
Awesome. Well, that's one of the questions I really get a lot is, how do I start doing contract work? How do I, get clients and things like that? And my first question is always, well, what have you done? Pretty much all clients, or getting your first client, you have to have done some client work before, or have some experience before, which is a little bit chicken or the egg type of thing. But it's not that hard to get a client if you're willing to work for free, for example. If you do free work for someone and you create a ton of value, you don't have to tell the next person that you did it for free. You had a legitimate client that you provided value for. And all of this stuff is based around social proof. It's about, justifying or validating that you can actually create value for someone. It's not as easy as going on Upwork or Fiverr and, putting a rate. You have to have, some backlog. You have to have some way to show that you are legitimate. I mean, it's like if you go on Amazon and you see a product with no reviews, at least I'm a little skeptical of it. That is one of the biggest parts in actually selling yourself, is being able to have that track record. So, I recommend that everyone, it doesn't matter how you do it, do legitimate work, try and build a track record. And that speaks for yourself. It speaks for itself when you actually go in for an engagement. I've only done one contracting job, and that's exactly how it happened. I went in, I met the guy. We had a good conversation about the specific value I could provide. It wasn't going in as like, oh, I'm trying to win a contract. I was just interested in their business. And he's like, oh, well, you've worked in sports analytics for 5 years. I don't know anyone else who's working in that space. Can you help us with this? And I was like, yeah, I mean, it works great for me. I have a specific skill set that is relevant to you, and you don't know anyone else. It's a perfect situation. So I think that, bottom line, it's a tough space to get into, but it is about exactly what you're saying, the sales, the marketing, and also the track record. So, is there anything else that those are kind of all my questions. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything, any final words aside from that everyone should definitely follow you on LinkedIn? Oh, and your YouTube channel, I forgot, of course.
Oh, yep.
I'll link it above and below.
I have a custom URL now, so you can just go youtube.com/Danny Ma. So
I love it.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. One thing I'd like to really point out is I know a lot of people, when they start working in the data science, they see all these awesome skills and all the things, and it seems really intimidating because the breadth of things that all the top guys are working on just seems really crazy. What I'd recommend is to, when you're starting off in your new roles, go for the places which might not necessarily give you the most compensation in terms of salary, but always go for learning. This whole thing, our whole career is just a continuous learning process. And the more you can learn early on, the wider your base is. So then you can really get greater experience in terms of understanding what really drives you, What are the skills that you want to improve in? What are some skills that you don't care for so much? And I think too many people get really pigeonholed in their career, especially within the data space as well, where you just get known as, oh, you're the data engineering guy. Why do you need to learn about machine learning? Or, oh, you're the statistics guy. You don't need to know about any computing, any software. So I think for anyone who's starting off with their trying to break into data science, definitely try and find roles which give you the most breadth of skills and experiences at the expense of higher salary. And I think this has been my own take on it throughout my whole career. I'd always go for the roles where I thought I would learn the most. And to this day, I still try and do that. I think I've been really lucky where some of the places where I've worked at, where I can actually add a lot of value with the skills that I do have. I've had the opportunity to also further upskill in some of the newer technologies where I can use them to add even more value. So it's like a very great cycle of learning if you can tie it back to the value. So in the end, it's all about, value is the key. So if you can frame up anything that you're working on, anything that you're learning, any content that you're writing, whenever you're interacting with people, you should always be freely giving out as much value as you can. Maybe not freely if you're doing paid contracting roles, but in a sense, you want to be like, some of the things that I think about is, if you're giving away so much for free, I can't imagine how great your paid stuff would be, for example. And different things like that are a bit more left field and interesting. But yeah, definitely, I would say if we had to take away anything from our chat today, it would be focus on value, giving value to others, where possible. If you can find a mentor, try and figure out how you can give value to them, even though you'll be gaining a lot of value from learning from them also. If you're going into a contracting role or trying to get some consultancy gigs as well, purely think about the value from the other person's perspective, the other party's perspective, and go from there. Try not to think through things too much, especially if you're going to go through from a selfish perspective, like I used to do. Try and always think about others first.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming in. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure everyone is going to find this so useful. Danny Ma, everyone. Again, all of his social stuff will be pinned in the top comment, be in the description, and also at the end of the video. All right,